Cosme Velho neighborhood. This is the tour under the arms of the Christ Redeemer, stories of the Cosme Velho neighborhood. My name is Kelly Tavares. I'm a tour guide in Rio, and from Rio Encantos, in a co-production with Pé na Porta and Pé na Arte, we are sharing a little bit of Rio's wonders with you. So follow with us, and today we'll have a nice storytelling and walk through the neighborhood of Cosme Velho, where you hear stories about queens, women travelers of the 19th century, and the Wizard of Cosme Velho. Well, and other curiosities as well. We will stop at the train station of Corcovado. And we decided to make this brief start in a different place today, just to show you something different, because each day you have something different on the experience as well. This is such a lovely neighborhood. Can you hear music in the air, the birds chirping? I feel that I need to take a walk, and I'm gonna take a walk with you. Oh, is there anybody there? Do you have any question? In case you do have questions, just leave in the comments and I will be happy to answer your questions afterwards. Let me check also here. Great. If there are any comments. Okay. All right. There is a short delay here on the presentation, but there is no problem, it's fine. And I'm checking here if somebody else is coming.
Sorry about the audio.
How is the audio? How is the quality of the audio? Is that fine? Ok.
Nobody's there.
Nobody's there. Eu tô aqui.
Tem 100 pessoas.
É. Ok.
Tinha uma pessoa antes.
Uhum.
Você falou, apareceu aqui.
Great. Awesome. So, direciona a câmera um pouquinho mais para casa, para a lixeira não aparecer.
Bota o fone aí para ouvir como é que tá o som.
Ah, tá. Só que eu vou ouvir minha própria voz, é meio ruim.
Aqui, eu tenho um fone aqui, tá?
Eu tenho também. So, just give me a sec. I'm gonna test the audio quality. And of course, se tivesse pessoas assistindo agora, a gente já saberia se estava funcionando. Testing the quality of the audio. How is it? I don't know. The quality is good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Great.
Great. So the audio is working fine. We are doing here today a test of the Cosme Velho route, and the sound is good and it's all right. So let's go. Now we chose this spot here because why? What's the reason? Because of that house over there. So Cosme Velho neighborhood, it was in the 18th century and the 19th century a place where it was like a countryside of the city, on the outskirts of the city, where we were today in Lavradio, for example, the historic city center of Rio. It was the hustle and bustle, where the hustle and bustle was in the 19th century. But here, no. This was a place where houses like these were built, like quintas or country houses, and people would have plantation farms on the back of these mountains, where today, fortunately, is the Tijuca forest. Okay, so let's take a brief walk through this amazing street, and then you get to know a little bit more of the neighborhood. Something dropped here. All right, shaking around. So yeah, let's take a walk, and soon I will see your questions as well. Can you hear this sound? There is a bird called sabiá and makes a beautiful, beautiful sound. There are many others here around. That's one I really love. Today was supposed to rain, so I came prepared with my umbrella. And I think now we can take a look at some of these architecture here. For example, of these houses. So many houses, in the time when these houses were built, such as this one on your left, it's the colonial style of the 18th century. So in the 1700s, these kind of houses were built here. When Rio de Janeiro as a colony, it was very small and the farms were being built here and the forest was being intensely devastated. Cosme Velho neighborhood, that one, for example, like a mansion style, is more eclectic style and it was built around the beginning of the 20th century. So this is a good example that you saw in three different houses. The first ones of the 18th century, 19th century, and 20th century. So there is a synthesis here of the architecture that you see throughout the neighborhood. And of course, down there when we leave this street, you see modern architecture as well. But the stories we are going to share today were mainly in the 19th century and 20th century as well. So I invite you to know who were the women living around here and the women travelers. Did you know that a British painter and a woman traveler of the 19th century was walking around this neighborhood doing her work, painting, and as a tutor of the Queen Maria Leopoldina, tutor of her daughter in the court, the royal court here in Brazil. And I'm going to share images of her painting as well. The Cosme Velho is known for its forest and for the Carioca River. So we will step by the Carioca River now. And its springs are born in the Silvestre, inside of the forest. And what's the meaning of Carioca? So this is something that people usually ask. And I'd like to know if, in case you have any questions as well, I will be checking once in a while here on our transmission, so I can follow up with you and answer any questions you might have. Quality of the audio. And so we are now leaving this very bucolic street, and I will show you the house of Roberto Marinho. This is by the river is under the house as well and passing nearby it. And the Carioca River, it was considered a cultural heritage of the state of Rio de Janeiro. And today there are different NGOs with volunteers taking care to preserve it. It crosses throughout different communities here, favelas and neighborhoods, which are spread in the city. And the house of Roberto Marinho, which is on the other side of this wall, is a house that was a colonial house and suffered some redecorations and remodelings in the 20th century. So you may ask me, like, who was Roberto Marinho? Why is he important? So Roberto Marinho, if I could make like a comparison with the owner of Fox Media Conglomerate, who was an Australian guy, nationalized American, like Rupert Murdoch, a right-wing guy, owner of the largest conglomerate global of media here in Brazil. He was very active here throughout the 20th century, aligned with other media powerful entrepreneurs and throughout the world. So, and his house is right here. So you already can see a little bit of the gardens, and the garden was built and designed by a very famous landscape architect of Brazil called Roberto Burle Marx. And it's really lovely. Roberto Burle Marx has already passed away, and he has his own house, which is lovely in Pontal, where we develop an experience there as well for those people who love landscape art. So when you come, I want to share you a little bit of the house, the remodeled house of Roberto Marinho, who already passed away. And today is the Institute Roberto Marinho. So you can come here and you appreciate his art collection of Brazilian modern art. Now, take a look more upper, and then you see the mountain of Corcovado. Look at how beautiful it is now with those clouds which are constantly creating this blanket, white blanket of fog, which embraces the statue of the Christ Redeemer. There are people coming and going, and then you can book your experience and come with me, either with me as a guide or with other guides as well. Like on the Hegel platform, where I will be running live stream tours, Tati Araújo, who is also a friend of mine, a colleague of mine here in Brazil, and she is also a tour guide, she runs a Hegel live stream inside of the house of Roberto Burle Marx, Roberto Marinho, I mean, which we highly recommend. So you could have access to the gardens of Burle Marx and to the collection of Brazilian modern artists. All right, so I think these houses with stone walls, they're very symbolic of the word carioca. Some people ask, what does carioca mean? And carioca, by the Tamoios, indigenous people which inhabited this land and this part of Rio before the arrival of the colonizers, and during the first centuries of the colonizations, they called cariocas the white people who arrived here and built up the houses with stones from the rivers in an European style. So it literally means the house of white people. But why I stopped here? I wanted to share with you a little bit of the Carioca River. It's the canalized river, and it suffers a lot with like the devastation of the places where it falls, it passes by with pollution. But there are also people fighting to preserve it. And the Carioca River, in the past, when most of these mountains were coffee plantations and were completely devastated, it started to suffer a lot with the reforestation, and the springs started to dry. So there were many droughts in Rio de Janeiro throughout the centuries, in the 19th century and also in the end of the 18th century. And what happens then, during the government of Emperor Dom Pedro II, with the scientists of his time, and Major Archer, they studied and decided that it was time to preserve the neighborhood of Cosme Velho and the places in Tijuca, where today is the Tijuca National Forest, making a reforestation project. And they were very upfront on their time, and in a very successful project, which today we have an amazing urban forest, which is the second biggest urban forest of the world. And the first, being the first one, located just on the other side, west side of the city, where Parque da Pedra Branca is located. So see how amazing the legacy of environmental projects and policies takes and leave a big impact in the present and for future generations as well. So here people are enjoying the neighborhood. like stopping at the bar to have a beer, chilling on a Saturday afternoon, how it's supposed to be. Now, the river lá, leaves its marks and talks its stories. For example, in the very place where you see this building today, it was located a water fountain, one of the many water fountains in the region. And I'm going to share with you a print of the water fountain located here on that time. And where is that? Here. Now, I'm testing this print. It's very small. I don't know if you can see the details. Yes, good. Thanks, Danielle, for your support with the camera. And here you see a print of the fountain that was located exactly on the place where this building is now, and the street on the side, which is Ladeira dos Guararapes. So this neighborhood is also covered with the different communities living on it, like residential areas, houses, favelas, and they are spread in the outskirts of the forest, in the limits of the forest as well. Now let me see, do you have any questions so far? Let me check. What? What is in this picture? So what is in this picture? Can you see? Well, if you look at the picture, good to remember. It was painted in the 19th century, and when many travelers came to Brazil looking for these new landscapes in order to create their travel diaries and print them and sell them throughout Europe about the new worlds that were the Americas. So yes, here you can see this carriage pulled by 2 horses, and women around the fountain chatting, and a man here close to this tree, which could be maybe the carriage's driver, who knows, people going up. And it's a way that you, through art, where you can travel around throughout time, is through art. Yeah, the water fountain was right here. Yeah. So the neighborhood of Águas Férreas was the name of this place. So people knew afterwards, like, and by the time of when this was built, that there were what we call the bonde or tram cars. And the tram cars, they brought people here, and people knew of this neighborhood, of the place of the mineral waters or Águas Férreas. Let's keep walking. Do you have any questions so far? I'm gonna check here in case you have questions, and we will walk down the neighborhood to see other stories as well. So let me see your questions. Eu estou ainda aprendendo a ver o que está ao vivo aqui.
Você tem que deixar o... sair.
Ele sai.
Tem que aumentar o tempo pra ele não fechar, entendeu? Pra não apagar o celular.
Ah, é. Boa. Good tip. I'm here with the production. Danielle gives me very good tips to handle this. Now, where we are crossing here it's like a crossroad of different roads and streets where there is a tunnel called the Tunnel Rebouças. And the name of Rebouças Tunnel is attributed to a black architect, engineer, and scientist of the 19th century who was the first black engineer of Brazil, and he was sponsored by the king Dom Pedro II to go and study abroad, and he had an exchange career in Britain, in France, and different other parts. Now I'd like to share with you briefly an example of neoclassic architecture at a cultural center, which was the house of Mendonça, who was a historian. And it was a house on his time, which was frequented by many local artists in the area. So we will cross the street. Today is abandoned. We will cross the street and share a little bit of the house architecture with you, so you can take a look at it. So this house is known as Solar dos Abacaxis, or the house of the pineapples. Can you see any pineapple there? Oh, today we are lucky. There is a door open there. That's very rare. And the Solar dos Abacaxis, the pineapple's house, you see an example here of the neoclassic architecture with an influence of the architect who learned with Jean de Montigny. And Jean de Montigny, he is a character who came, an architect who came with the French mission to Brazil with other artists and scientists to document and build up what would be the colony of the time and then the empire. The moment where we needed many constructions and institutions, and there are many histories around it. So I really would like to call your attention to some of the aspects of the neoclassic style, which is the symmetry of the windows, how one side looks as the other, and how the front part of it has this triangular rooftop, what is very typical of that area. Unfortunately, the house now is abandoned. The heirs are working with local government to see if they get some funding to reactivate it as a cultural center in the future, the near future. Now, let's take another walk and a brief look to a colonial style house. Is that white building over there on the other side, which is more typical from the 18th century. Do you have any questions so far? If you don't have any questions, let's keep going. I would like to call your attention to keep posted on our live streaming pages and our social media, and please follow us on Rio Encantos social media as well, to keep aware of the tours we're promoting, virtual experiences as well, and walking tours. So we work in a collaboration with other tour guides in Rio de Janeiro, offering Black history walks, offering experiences of all sorts, historic tours, but also nightlife, cultural life, gastronomic experiences. And now we're entering another hidden gem and spot of this neighborhood, which is the square of the pharmaceutist. In the square of the pharmaceutist, you see a set of buildings which is interestingly assembled together, and they are also from the 19th century in new colonial style, suffering throughout time since the 18th century from colonial to new colonial style, different remodelings. Now, it's currently on a construction site where they are finally, after decades of abandonment and occupation, they're creating this hotel, hostel, bar, and restaurant. So definitely come and check this out. When you come to Rio de Janeiro, many people come here and they think that spending just 2-3 days in Rio would be enough. But as a local and a tour guide, I always keep my eyes open with the spirit of a visitor and of someone who wants to discover new places more and more each day. And many of us with this, keeping this adventurous spirit, we are really fortunate on really finding new spots to go, new spots which starts and open and close, or nature itself has so much to offer. From land to sea, we can live different experiences. Now, do you have any questions so far? Okay, I have a curiosity here for you. And this was known as the square of the pharmaceutist. And the pharmaceutist was called Joaquim Souto, a Portuguese pharmaceutist who was a business owner, a pharmaceutist. And he had his business there in the historic center of Rio, around the streets of Ouvidor. And here lived many wealthy families who had businesses there. And he built his house here. Afterwards, other houses were built on the other side as well. Now they are connecting this architecture. And a curiosity about it is that on the classical 007 movie with James Bond, this was the house of the character of James Bond in the movie Moonraker. Now, I have a question for you. When was that house there, that part of the house? Yes. Now I have a question for you. When is the movie Moonraker released, launched? When was that? 1985, 1972, or 1979? So I'm not gonna give you the answer now, but you can put in the comments afterwards and I will check that, okay? And give you the right answer in the comments as well. This was listed, this architecture and building, and it's now listed by the State Heritage Protection. So they were through a set of policies with tax waiver. Fortunately, they were able to find investors who saw the opportunity of having such a hostel near the Christ Redeemer train station, where is one of the most visited attractions in Rio de Janeiro. So when you come to Rio, reserve not only 3 or 5 days and come in on a rush. Try to stay 1 week at least, 2 weeks, it's great. And you'll be amazed with so much that you'll be able to find and experiment here. We are just sharing tiny bits of Rio's wonders with you. Me from Rio Encantos experiences and Pena Porta video productions as well. Let's keep going. Do you have any questions so far? Let me check here. So you can hear here a little bit more of the Carioca River. And see, this was canalized as most of the Rios which runs and crosses throughout the city. In the house here on the right, it lived artists and one of the first art educators of Brazil as well. The one interesting thing is that the association of residents of this neighborhood, they have a very nice sense of preserving the history and the legacy of the neighborhood, putting this kind of signs on the houses talking about the historic places and curiosities, and saying, for example, this was the art studio and residency of painter and art educator from Pernambuco, Augusto Rodrigues, who lived here from 1913 to 1993. And he founded the first art school of Brazil. So this is very neat when you are in your neighborhood, in your country, wherever you are, and you are interested to know the history of a place. And among African people of the Ashanti people, there is a word and a saying that is called the Sankofa. And the Sankofa is represented by a bird with an egg on the back, kind of a phoenix. And this bird has an egg and is looking back to the egg. And that means go back to the past and find out about your history, because it's where you find answers to the way of living, the way of giving meaning to your life as well, and being engaged in that context. So the neighborhood of Cosme Velho, they did that with many houses here, acknowledging the richness of the country, the neighborhood, and remembering some of the very important people who contributed with the history of this country as well. For example, soon we will stop briefly at the entrance and house of Astragésilo de Ataíde. And Astragésilo de Ataíde was very active on drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. And playing that role, an important role, in a connection with other philosophers and social scientists of his time, to bring this human content and value to the Universal Declarations of Rights. So he lived here in this neighborhood. And it's right there, his house. We are getting there. And I want to know if you have questions so far. I'm going to check here on the messages. So please let me know. There is the river here also in the canal, and a bus station. So to get here at the Cosme Velho neighborhood, you can come easily accessible from the South Zone, the touristic areas like Copacabana, Ipanema. Here's the river. And it's also accessible by bus, being some of the bus lines finishing here, taxi, and Uber. So it's super easy to come. Now, looking there in the front, you already can see on the right side the pink house of Astragésilo de Ataíde. Who was also once president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters. And since you don't have any questions so far here, we can call your attention to the parish and church of São Judas Tadeu, what is in front of us. And it's a beautiful parish right in front of the Corcovado train station. We are almost getting to the station. The church is a modern church built in the 60s, but the first construction was in the 40s in the neighborhood of Laranjeiras. We are now in this frontier between Laranjeiras and Cosme Velho neighborhood. There is a restaurant here on your left, what you can come to also when you come visit the Corcovado. And the house, look at that house. There is a sign on the top, as many of them have, from 1827. Is another example of colonial architecture, as this street being one of the main ones where small, tiny shops, family-owned, were located. On the other side of the street, you see a nice house also from the end of the 19th century, where it was until 2016 the Museum of Naive Art. Do you know what naive art is? So the Museum of Naive Art holds a collection, a big collection of artists who weren't educated in the fine arts academies. And there is a collection of more than 290 artists, naive artists from all over the world. Naive art is simply the artists who were self-taught in the art of painting, sculpture, or any other media. So please let me know if you have any other questions. Just leave here in the comments, okay? And I'll be happy to answer afterwards. Now look at this. We are showing you one of the best fun ways to get to the Christ Redeemer statue. Is the station of Christ Redeemer, one of the top attractions. This station was founded in 1884. Now imagine the Emperor Dom Pedro II. He was known as a scientist and an adventurous person who liked to hike all the way up to the mountain. Travel around the world and collect pieces and different arts, antiques, and artifacts of like looting materials of people from different parts of the world. And with that, looting materials are also gifts received from different emperors of different nations. He founded, and also with things from Portugal as well, which came with the arrival of the royal family in 1808. They were able to found institutions such as the National Museum of Rio, the National Library, and coming here to the station, when he looked at the mountain of Corcovado, he already understood the touristic potential of it to attract people from different places to go hiking the mountain. And he himself would go with friends and with guests and visitors, inviting them to hike to what today is the Dona Marta viewpoint and the Corcovado, where they set up there in the mountain like a kiosk, and where they would have like picnics after nice hikes. Today we hike to the Corcovado as well, but there are other ways to get there. So you can go from Parque Lage in a 2-hour hike. You can go hiking through the neighborhood, but it's mainly for locals. But mainly you take the van or the train from this very train station where we are now. So that's the ticket office where you go and get your ticket, and you arrive 30 minutes before the train departs, and you can book the experience on the internet. That's how is the best way to do it. Book it before you come, and then you go there or you arrive here and you get your ticket. I think the train's coming. We can wait a little bit and see. And I would like to know if you have any questions around this. One of the curiosities is that, did you know that the Christ Redeemer is one of the new 7 wonders of the world? It is. So a Swiss foundation was established this contest to vote for different new 7 wonders of the new times. And the Christ Redeemer was one of the 7 most voted attractions among attractions of all over the world. And it's really impressive and worth going there. Definitely is worth going. Some people come and say, oh, I don't mind about doing the main attraction. It's so touristic, everybody goes. But see, if you can do it, Sugarloaf Mountain, the least touristic attractions, and the Corcovado, just go for it. Because it's 710 feet tall, high, or 710 meters tall, or 2,330 feet tall. It means that it's so high that you can have a great look of the city from north to south zone. So it's impressive to see the city center, Cosme Velho, the forest, the beaches, Copacabana, Ipanema, Leblon, and the Sugarloaf Mountain from up there. So do it. Do you have any questions so far before you continue walking? We'll show you from the square as well. Let me see here. Okay, there is a question here from Hannah. My sweet Hannah, meu amor. Thanks for being there, giving that support and watching her, minha filhinha linda. So, well, in the case of the Sugarloaf Mountain, the gondola was connected by the cables to put the gondola and connect the two hills. But in the case of Corcovado, first it was inaugurated the train station in 1884 and finished in 1885. But the statue itself, it was inaugurated only in 1931. So it was afterwards. Before that, with the train station, people would go... Olá, tudo bom? People would go to the mountain, and then there was a very fancy hotel called the Paineiras Hotel, which later was abandoned and decayed. But before it got to that time, it had a casino, hosted parties, and many ballrooms, and people were there together, like people, famous artists from all over the world, queens and kings. And after that, the building was occupied by different institutions and then decayed. Now the Paineiras was redecorated, reconstructed, and it's one of the stops of the train station. What's really fun, because they have a small museum with the history of the station and with the history of the Tijuca reforestation project, a shop and cafes. Now here you can see the statue of the first, the engineer João Teixeira Soares, with the muses, which represents the inspirations for the creations of the train station. And they are just by his side. This was set here in 1930. And now I'm going to share with you on the middle of the square the first engines which were used in 1910. Now, take a look at this picture here. Please make a nice composition of framing of the Corcovado mountain with this beautiful view and the statue there. Now, you can take a postcard from here, make a print of this nice composition and enjoy the view. Today, you are lucky. You know why you're lucky? Because the weather just opened up. It was all covered on the cloud blankets. And now the Christ is with his open arms to reception us. But if the camera is still not completely capturing the statue for you, we can get a helicopter flight and make a panoramic flight all the way to the top of the statue, and you can see the details of this amazing statue. Showcasing from a closer distance what we reserved for you. Look at how nice we are to bring this close, the statue very close to you. Closer than that, just doing the tour of the Christ Redeemer, either with me or with Tati Araújo, who does the Christ Redeemer virtual tour on the Hegel platform. And soon I will do one as well. But enjoy, enjoy. Enjoy the Christ. And let's now check the first engines of 1910. Thank you so much, Daniel Falcão from Pé na Porta, doing the panoramic flight with the drone on the Christ. Thank you, Hannah, so much. Thank you for your support. Now, take a look at this engine. Can you imagine going up inside of the forest to go to the top of that mountain in 1885? My goodness. And the last time we came here, there was a skunk living inside of these engines. Let's see if we are lucky enough to see that skunk again. I just saw a beautiful, a long tail, and I thought, my goodness, is that a rat? And then I realized that it was just a Brazilian skunk. It was very fun because it scared me, but it's a nice little creature. Don't worry. Don't be afraid.
Okay, yeah.
Ah, so there's the kitty cat.
Keep this cat.
Now, do you have any question? This engine was manufactured in Switzerland, and it was the first electric engine of Brazil. Can you imagine that the first electric engine of Brazil was established right here, and we are here, just missing you to be here. So come with us, come with Reencantos, and let's keep walking because there is a little bit more to share with you. A little bit more, much more. Do you have any questions so far? Don't be afraid to ask, is what I usually say. If I don't know, I will Google after the tour, and I will learn more as well. I will be happy to share the answers on the comments so we can connect. Looking at the church there from up front as well, how nice it is. Inside of it is have beautiful glass works that are worth taking a look at. And if you're a Catholic, you have a good time in a beautiful church as well. There is a nice, come here please. There is a nice mural, street art painting there, mural there. And we are getting close to the Pediatry Museum. So for you who are doctors or interested in the history of medicine, we are just coming to the Brazilian Association of Pediatrics. Sorry, sometimes I get kind of stumbling upon and stuttering with the English. So this is the Brazilian Association of Pediatry. And there is a museum which is founded in 1910. And if you want to have a little bit of it before you come, if you're interested to visit, you need to book a ticket beforehand. And there is a virtual tour in 3D on their website. I still haven't taken that tour, but I'm very curious to do it. And there is a curiosity about it. These, in places such as churches, like the Third Order of Carmo, for example, and even here, there were places you will find an object called the Wheel of the Rejected. And what was the Wheel of the Rejected? Do you have any guess? So the Wheel of the Rejected was, how can I say that? A container, a round container, where mothers in vulnerable conditions would leave their babies to be adopted by the church, the convents, on the orphanages. And these kids would live there, most of them, for the rest of their lives. So it's estimated that in about 100 years, thousands of people, dozens of thousands of people were left in these containers. Unfortunately, a sad reality of single mothers in hard times in this country. It's still today a big reality, and you can find in a museum like this data, history of not only the pediatry, but these curious facts that tells the history of our country through the objects as well. So I recommend. Do you have any question? Now, if you're enjoying this tour, I will remind you to follow our YouTube channel of Rio Encantos Experiences. And also follow Rio Encantos soon. We will be launching experiences on the Heygo platform for live stream. Is this showing okay? Yes, good, thank you. Thank you, Danny. Now, we're getting here to one of almost last final attractions of the neighborhood, which is the Queen's Fountain. So the Queen's Fountain, it was built in the 19th century. It was also redecorated and changed. But before, there was a stream and a spring inside of the forest and a fountain here as well. And it's known as the Queen's Fountain because the Queen, Carlota Joaquina, with the Queen, Dona Maria I, and Carlota Joaquina, the princess, they would come here looking after the medical properties of its mineral waters. Remember, the name of the neighborhood was known as Águas Férreas. And they were known by helping the health and of the queen, of Carlota Joaquina also, the princess, who suffered of skin diseases. And also Maria I suffered of depression because of the numerous losses she had throughout her life. So this is one place where locals get very curious about, and where many visitors coming from other places, coming here just for the statue of Christ Redeemer, they don't get to know about it. But now taking this tour here with me, this virtual tour, you are aware of many of the richness and potential of this neighborhood. Now, we will find an opportunity to cross the street, which is very busy by now, to show you the painting of a British traveler who was wandering around Rio in the years 1821, 22, and 23. Do you know who this woman was? There is a quiz for you, curiosity. So this painter, she was a young woman married with a man who was from the Navy, a British man. And later she got married with a painter and her second husband, and she was a painter herself. She was very upfront on her time, and she came to Brazil working as a tutor to the princess and daughter of Carlota Joaquim. I'm going to share with you a painting made by her husband. Let me find where that is. Just give me a second. Somewhere inside of my bag here, which will show you the painting that this lady did of the place here. I'm not finding it now. I'm finding now yeah, I haven't printed that one. I printed the painting of the painter who was walking around here in the neighborhood of Cosme Velho. Do you know who is this woman? This British traveler walking on the streets of Rio de Janeiro was painted here by Sir Lawrence in 1820. This is from 1818, by the time before coming to Brazil, when she was traveling around India and Italy. Painting, she was a very good watercolorist. And there is another painting of her made by her second husband. And here, this is from 1830s. Do you know already her name? Maria Graham. And there is another print which I will share with you on the live stream tour when I make this tour on the Heygo platform. So I will share a painting which Maria Graham did of this very fountain, this very location in 1821. So I recommend you to keep posted if you're curious to see this portrait, this painting. And the portrait I showed you last was painted by Augustus Wall Calcutt, who was her second husband. An interesting thing is that she was friend of Maria Leopoldina of Austria, the empress, married with Dom Pedro I. And she lived in Brazil in these years of the beginning of the 1820s. She published a book called The Voyage to Brazil in the years of 21, 22, and 1823, by the time when she was a resident here. Now we are going to our last location of this tour, which is the place where we remember the writer Machado de Assis. There you learn a little bit of who was the wizard of Cosme Velho.
Vou te falar assim, tipo, agora a gente vai deixando aqui um pouco no silêncio para ouvirem um pouco, sentir um pouco a vibe. Aí quando você tiver muito tempo de falar, você fala isso.
Good, that's great. So that's a busy time of the day here. There is a school, a Catholic school, and the cars are, going. There are two schools, traditional schools. One school that comes from a tradition more of the monasteries, of the priests, which is the Colégio São Vicente de Paulo, and another one from the traditions of the nuns, the Sion, the school as well. So now enjoy a little bit of this nice, pleasant neighborhood, and consider when coming here to dedicate more time to the neighborhood and enjoy some of the things that we just appreciated during this walk. Now we are arriving at our last spot, and here where you see this modern building today, built probably around the 70s or 60s. It was located the old house of Machado de Assis. There is a plaque there signalizing this history, but unfortunately by that time the house was already decaying and didn't receive the proper attention before it had to be demolished. And then we lost, that historic testimonial of the past of the house of one of the greatest writers and novelists of Brazil, Machado de Assis. So here is the writer of African descent who wrote chronicles, novels, short stories in a very ironic style. He was an intellectual and founder of the Brazilian Academy of Letters, and considered in Brazil as one of the most famous and most important writers of this time, his time, until today as well. And he was a translator and very aware of the works of Freud and other contemporaries from his time as well. Played an important role in the abolitionist movement as well, criticizing through his chronicles the social extracts, layers of our society. So I definitely recommend reading his work. And there is a small print here of the house that used to be in this very place where we are now. One of these colonial houses of 1884, of when he came to live here. He stayed throughout his life until his last days with his wife. Now, do you have any questions so far? Okay. If you do, please remember to leave in the comments. And one of the books which I really love and that I'd like to finish with here is, before reminding you, please follow us on our social media as well. And we are on YouTube, Instagram, and HeyGo. We will appreciate if you liked to share with your friends and support us with your tips, making your donations, and attending our tours on HeyGo. Yeah. Now, do you have any questions? Let me see what you have here if anyone is asking something. And would you like to know something about the work of Machado de Assis itself? There is a nice book of him which I had to read on my school time. It was the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas. And you can find this on Amazon in English as well, so you can appreciate. Well, we can stop by here because this architecture here is one of the buildings that was probably here, up here. This is the school of the nuns, Catholic school, and it was here when Machado de Assis was living in this house. So I think it's a good example of architecture where I can close this tour and telling about the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas. Does anyone know about Brás Cubas? So Brás Cubas was a character of Machado de Assis, which starts the book with his posthumous memoirs. So he was already dead, narrating from back to front, starting from his coffin, and he dedicates the book to the first worm who ate his flesh. With that, Machado de Assis was setting a stone for something that was new and authentic, also mainly in Brazilian literature as well. And there is the trajectory of this character, which starts to remember his life from when he was born until his final days. And with this kind of chronicles and novels, Machado de Assis was putting a lot of critique over the Brazilian society of his time. A man of his time, really worth reading. And one of the books he wrote, living in this house, he edited when he moved to that house, was the Stories Without a Date. I don't know if it's still translated to English, but I am reading that and I'm having such a good time. That's it. Thank you so much for following us. And if you don't have any questions now, I'm going to close the tour. And please follow us, keep posted, and let me know if you need anything. I'm Kelly Tavares, a tour guide in Rio de Janeiro, sharing for you a little bit of Rio's wonders. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pena Porta and Daniel Falcão, for your support and production. And I hope you come back soon to Brazil. Bye bye.